Well, the one I said where we were there all night, rewriting the scene back and forth between the two actors, I was beside myself. Another funny thing was when we were out at the Bulldog Cafe, which was out in Indian Dunes out in north of the valley. And this is just silly, but we were leaving, and Tim Dalton was in a BMW and he was driving next to us on the freeway. And Paul and I started to start chasing him like it was James Bond in the Bond film. We'll never forget that. I don't think we could get a ticket, but it was pretty funny. And we were laughing. The set, for us also, we were making The Flash at the same time, so we didn't get to spend as much time on the set as we would have liked. But I did visit many times. I visited where they shot the Howard Hughes thing, where they died in the gondola. They went like a week over in there because it was so tight. But then, the worst thing is we lost a week in the South Seas Club. Because the action that we wrote in the South Seas Club was my favorite action in the script. Because he literally picked up a palm tree like a jousting ram and blasted his way through. I remember Joe being so upset because Katzenberg came to the set and said, we're cutting a week because you're over budget. And a lot of that action was diminished in there. That's another thing that kind of bugs me. But it bugs Joe more, believe me. That was ugly. I mean, because Joe was really upset when they were making those cuts. Now, the movie cost $43 million in 1990, right? Which in that time was not, it was like medium. That wasn't a giant budget. And boy, I think that Joe and Jim Bissell and everybody, they really got a lot on the screen. I mean, it looks like, yeah, well, it's very weird. Yeah. Look, the thing is, Joe Johnston is a visualist. If you see any of those documentaries on the Disney Channel about Lucasfilm in the original days, and that Joe designed the ads. Joe designed Yoda. I mean, Joe designed so much stuff. Here's the other thing that was interesting. When he came to the project, there was another director before him, Bill Deere, but when Joe came to the project, Joe flew ultralights. So Joe is another aviation nut, along with Dave was an aviation nut. There's another person who was a big influence on the Rocketeer, a comic book artist named Mike Kaluta, who was a very close friend of Dave's and ultimately a close friend of Paul and I's. We all spent a lot of time together back in those days, and then Paul and I are all Dave's friends that work on other stuff we were doing. But Mike, the auto gyro at the end, that's from Kaluta, because he drew it in one of those panels, one of those tribute panels in the old Rocketeer. So there's a lot of people who love the same stuff. I keep saying that, but I think that's where this movie comes from, is people who really love the old movies, who love old aviation stuff, coming together. And it did take a long time, like Jennifer said. It took 6 years to get it made. But so did The Five Bloods, our last movie. It took 6 years to get made. It's a weird thing. Hollywood's that way. Here's the other thing, is that there were a couple of other writers who came in. Jim Kauf did a draft, and all I know is we kept one line, which was Big Gopher, which was a great joke. Great joke. And then Frank Darabont did a draft, and I'm sure there's stuff in there of his, I don't remember what it was. The cool thing, and very unusual for the era, was that they brought Paul and I back to do all the last drafts. And I think that had a lot to do with the producers, because we haven't talked about them, Larry Gordon and Chuck Gordon and Lloyd Levin. We had done a lot of work with them, we were very close with them, and so between them and Joe Johnson and Dave Stevens and everybody else, it was our project. And that didn't happen back then, especially at Disney. It would be like, new draft, new writer, new draft, new writer. So getting back on there and doing the final drafts was a really great thing. Look, this is Paul's passed away, but this movie's probably our favorite thing we did. Certainly, I can say that together.